to wants to get comfortable, whatever comfortable means to you. Make adjustments in your body so that you're well supported and erect as you can be without stressing anything. Sitting comfortably.
Comfortably numb.
And you should bring your attention, close your eyes or soften your gaze and bring your attention to your feet. So bring your whole attention to your feet. Bring your consciousness down to your feet. Imagine that you're filling up the entire interior space of your feet. Understand that you're inhabiting the interior of your feet and knowing that part of your body from the inside out. Now imagine the light of attention hovering above your head and a hole opening up for your central channel, and imagine a warm white nectar pouring down the central channel and filling your body on the inside from your feet all the way up, slowly but surely, filling your ankles, your legs, your pelvic seat. You're inhabiting your body from the feet to your pelvis. Allow that liquid luminosity to rise up and inhabit your chest, your throat, inhabit your face, inhabit your head, inhabit the very center of your brain. Inhabiting your entire body with your attention on your world from the inside out. Now notice your breathing. Notice the whole body breathing. Notice that inhabiting the body has the amazing effect of keeping you present, grounded on earth, feeling the weight of gravity, the embrace of the planet. And right here, right now, take a few deep breaths, inhaling, and a long, full exhale, letting go of anxiety. And one more inhale, inhaling the suffering of the world, knowing compassion, and exhaling love, compassion, and kindness. One more inhalation and one more full exhalation as you relax completely. We'll take just half a minute to sit in silence. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. So, page 160.
60. Okay. So I'm going to start right here with the paragraph. This is self-knowing, meaning that the unmistaken realization of that which is self-knowing is wisdom, because it knows the primordial true nature. Ordinary beings who are like children don't know how to describe the direct perception. It is not within the experience of the afflicted mind's thoughts. Therefore, there is nothing to teach you until you have experienced it for yourself. This is also said in a Doha. We'll leave it here. Okay. So that's the end of the lesson for tonight, because there's nothing I can possibly teach you. So the lesson is over. Okay. Just a joke.
So let's experience then.
Let's experience it. Okay. We'll just do meditation for an hour and a half. Okay. Okay. Actually, I was joking, and I will talk even though I don't know what I'm talking about. Let's start with the first sentence, self-knowing. Now,
I'm sorry, where are you?
am I in the right
It's
place?
on 159.
159.
I think we left off at the
decided to
sixth
back
meditation, didn't we?
I decided to back up a little.
Oh, okay.
You know, the facilitator's privilege.
So, self-knowing. Now, we've been talking about that in all this section. It starts, the footnote refers us back to the quote by Talopa, which is, "This is self-aware wisdom. It transcends the path of speech. It cannot be experienced by the mind. I, Talopa, have nothing to teach, knowing that it is revealed to you by yourself." Okay. Now, self-knowing is a little bit of philosophical background here, in that generally the way Mahamudra is presented is first that we look at the mind, and then we see that the mind is empty. We see the mind contains all phenomena, and then we see that the mind is empty, and therefore all phenomena are also empty. Now, so when we're talking about the mind, we're not just talking about what's inside our head or what's inside our body. We're talking about our experience of the entirety of reality. So it's not little mind, it's big mind. So, and the phrase self-knowing is because critics of this mind-only approach to Buddhism said, well, mind can't know itself any more than the eye can see itself. So they said that obviously the mind-only approach that says all phenomena are mind has to be false. But the mind-only school said in answer to this that the mind can know itself just as a lamp can light itself. So when they're talking about the self-knowing mind, they're talking about the awareness which encompasses not only the subjective, but also the objective. Everything is the self-knowing mind. And it's knowing everything to be the mind is unmistaken realization. And that is the primordial true nature. Okay. So anyway, that's my opinion. Does anybody have any thing they would like to add about that?
I think it's important to note, he said it's not within the experience of the afflicted mind's thoughts. And usually when we think of mind as kind of a subject that's aware of something else, it's the object. Or the mind has thoughts, which are like the mind is there and then the thoughts are there and as an object of the mind, you know? But self-awareness is not dualistic like that.
Okay. Anybody else want to add something or not? If not, we can go on to the quotes which support his position here. Don't disturb water or a lamp's flame. They are naturally clear. I neither perform going and coming nor reject them. Akieho, this is self-knowing. Other than that, there is nothing that can be directly taught. Do not be deluded about this. Also in the summary of the view, that elaboration-free self-knowing appears while empty and is empty while appearing. Therefore, it is the inseparability of appearance and emptiness. It is like the example of the moon on water. In this way, gains certainty in non-duality. All texts have such teachings can bring certainty through quotation and reasoning, but I shall stop here so as to keep it simple. That concludes the introduction to the 6 consciousnesses. So what he's saying here is there's nothing more to be known in the practice of Mahamudra, than your own mind. But that mind is actually all phenomena and all appearance, and all appearance is actually empty. So knowing the mind means knowing everything. So if anybody wants to make a comment, feel free to make a comment right now. If not, I'll continue. Thus, shamatha and vipassana arise by resting in the clear and non-conceptual mind and becoming familiarized to the nature of self-knowing, to the inseparability of appearance and emptiness. The coarser afflictions will then be overcome, and you will enter the true path. Therefore, the great masters of the path gave direct introduction by saying, see the mind. Okay. This stage accords with the following teaching. A vipassana that has excellent shamatha is a knowledge that completely defeats the afflictions. Therefore, first seek shamatha and accomplish it with true joy, free from worldly attachment. Okay. So I will ask a question here. I ask you to define vipassana, what is it?
It's a contemplative inquiry.
Inquiry into any particular thing, or just inquiry in
The mind inquiring of itself as
Okay.
to what's rising and its origins, with the goal of seeing the empty nature in wherever we're pointed.
Okay. Anybody else?
Insight into reality.
So vipassana is insight into reality. Anybody else has an opinion? Definition of vipassana?
It's more of a mindfulness. meditation technique.
Okay, so how does Vipassana differ from shamatha practice? What's the difference? Or are they the same thing?
I think shamatha enables one to practice vipassana because it can't be practiced without that focused concentration.
So shamatha is concentration and Vipassana is what?
Insight.
Insight?
Yeah.
Vipassana is to gain insight, is to see, right?
Okay.
Shamatha is the calm abiding. So that's sort of finding the baseline that leads to and facilitates the Vipassana.
Okay, so and in terms of Mahamudra, is there a specific Mahamudra type of Vipassana or no? Or are all types of Vipassana the same?
Well, in social meditation, there's a practice. There's a practice that asks one uh, to listen for the sounds of a ship at a seaport on the other coastline, and listen closely. And in that way, one is leaning in towards Mahamudra theoretically. So without being able to touch it, one can at least sort of incline towards, and by inclining being that sort of the mudra, the grand gesture of like leaning towards or turning towards that pure nature, the Buddha nature.
I see it as a gradual, or like the shamatha works with more like coarse feelings of ourselves, where the Vipassana just kind of like it's more of a progression, and then you get to a Mahamudra state. That's, I guess, how I see it.
Well, okay, so I'm not saying my answer is any better than anybody else's, but I would answer Vipassana is investigating the nature of mind once one has achieved a certain level of concentration through the practice of shamatha in order to see that mind is empty. Mind is empty, meaning it has no definitive characteristics, and the characteristics which we attribute to it are falsely attributed to it. So that's what Vipassana means to me. So the mind is beyond any determination, beyond any definitive characteristics, and one investigates this during the practice of concentrated meditation in order to see it in one's personal experience rather than just read it in books. Okay, so that's my definition of Vipassana.
Bernie, when you say investigates, is more like clearing the mind, or
Investigate actually looking at the mind to see what it's like. It's like maybe you have well, the analogy that they use in the path of purification is you have a coin in your hand. Let's say you're a money changer and you get money from different countries, and you look at the coin and you look at it very closely to see whether it's counterfeit or not. And you have experience. So you look at the coin, you're looking at the coin to see its characteristics, and in order to determine whether it's a counterfeit coin or not. In the same way, you look at the mind very closely in order to see what characteristics the mind might have. And when you look at the mind, what you see is that what seemed to be an ego, what seemed to be a self, is not actually a self at all. That what we took to be our self is our mind, but the mind is not a self. It really has nothing that it can be characterized by at all. Anyway, my opinion.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's good.
So
And which one of that process, looking at the coins, is shamatha versus vipassana?
shamatha is taking the coin in the hand and holding it steady.
Okay. Yeah.
So if if you didn't have the coin in your hand so you could look at it closely, you wouldn't be able to examine its characteristics. But once you have it in your hand, you can look at the coin and examine it very closely to see whether it's counterfeit or not. And yeah, okay. So that's the relationship.
So making an analog to meditation, basically, you would be looking at your body the same way that you're looking at the coin and analyzing and trying to get a good
Yeah,
grip of your feelings, your
right.
emotions of everything.
Mind is, Mahamudra is mind looking at the mind. Basically, the way we start is by mind looking at its thoughts. But it ends up with mind seeing what the mind is, and that's really what the practice of Mahamudra is. It's resting in that self-aware mind, which is mind being aware of mind. So, my opinion only.
And it's not a self.
And it's not a self. The mind is not a self. And that's what you try to determine through the practice of meditation. Just looking at it, it becomes clear that it is not a self. That what we took it to be is not what it actually is.
Right. We get to watch our thoughts rise and dissipate so quickly that there's no way that they represent any sustained identity. And then we get to realize that what we're looking at is just the mind masturbating.
Yeah, well, it's the three marks of existence, one of which is impermanence, of course, the impermanence of our thoughts, impermanence, suffering, and non-ego. So those are the three marks in order. So yeah.
Can I add something?
In terms
I guess,
of
like in your analogy, Bernie, if looking at the coin would be shamatha and analyzing the coins would be vipassana, I guess Mahamudra would be the equivalent of Bitcoin, something.
Bitcoin is looking at the coin and seeing that it's something that you didn't think it was. You thought it was one thing and it's actually another. So,
Right.
Okay, I don't know.
Can I add something?
Sorry, Lance, go ahead.
Go ahead, Lance. Go ahead.
Well, to put this into a perspective of the stages of meditation.
Right.
And the goal of the meditation is Mahamudra. And we go through these stages of being able to understand the impure body, our impure body, our brain, our whole process and so on, as being impure. What we're trying to get to is to a pure body, the body of the Dharmakaya, the body of the Buddha. So first we go through the stages of examining, the emotions and all that and everything. So we go through bodhicitta process to be able to get to that. And then we get to shamatha, where we're using the technique of being able to rest, calm, abiding, and being able to develop that technique. But as we do that, things do arise. And we examine those things. Some of those things were very easily to be able to cut right through. Some of them might be thoughts of our studies, what it is to have an impure mind, what it is to be a meditator, what it is Buddhism, all these different things that we study about the Dharma and so on. So the investigation of all that is the Vipassana, the Vipassana. So we spend time with that until we're able to exhaust that. And then we're ready for the next stage, which would be the bliss stage. That's when we're looking for something to take us to the pure body. That we've now exhausted the impure body, but we need some we need some guidance to get to the next stage. So then we enter into the deity yoga, which takes us into the generation stage and the completion stage of the deity yoga, which then, through that bliss body experience, the purification of the impurity takes us to the purity, and then we come to the Mahamudra.
Okay. Well, fortunately, the next topic here, as you probably know, is the three characteristics of meditation: bliss, clarity, and non-thought. And so I guess we'll move on to that right now. The sixth meditation. First, know the signs that indicate when meditations are accompanied by realization or not. When the mind is controlled, jhana develops, from which come three benefits from jhana: bliss, clarity, and non-thought. So we explain each of these in turn. Bliss comes first. There are two kinds of bliss: physical bliss and mental bliss. This is at first mixed with the afflictions, but subsequently bliss free from afflictions pervades the entire body. In the end, even if one feels heat, cold, and so on, the bliss is only intensified. Mental bliss. The mind becomes happy, joyful, and free of pain. This has the same three stages as in physical bliss. Okay, so I was a little puzzled here about what were the three stages, but I think the three stages is first mixed with afflictions, then free from afflictions, which is the second stage, and in the end, the afflictions arise as bliss, which is the third stage. Anybody else has any other opinion of that? Feel free to say it. So when it says the afflictions here, what afflictions do you think they're talking about? The usual afflictions of desire, aggression, and ignorance, or
Yeah.
the usual?
Yeah,
Mix of those, or any of those that are mixed.
bliss is, I mean, bliss is usually rises up out of emotion.
Yeah.
But any of the afflictions that are part of our storytelling around the physical
So
feeling
it's
of bliss.
like the afflictions in terms of the kleshas then. And
I think so.
So the second stage would be so bliss. I can see how bliss would be mixed with greed. It's a little harder to see how bliss would be mixed with the aggression, but maybe that's possible.
I think there's an easy way to.
Yeah.
I think there's an easy way to look at these three stages.
Okay.
The first sentence: this is at first mixed with the physical afflictions. Put the word physical in front of the afflictions. You're talking about the bodily afflictions.
Okay.
And then if you have the same three stages for the mind, you simply say mental afflictions. And I think you get a good delineation. You know, first it's free from the afflictions, then it's mixed. Excuse me, first it's mixed, then it's free, and then even when you feel the affliction, you feel the bliss.
Okay.
It can
And
you're
feeling that it's like physical sensations of pain or something like
I
that.
think it says it: heat, cold. It mentioned.
Right. And the third.
I think that's an easy way to understand it.
So you're not thinking it's like greed, aggression, and ignorance there. I
I
wasn't
think
sure.
those are more mental.
Okay.
I think it's literally talking about physical and mental experience.
So the first stage would be physical afflictions and the second would be mental afflictions.
Yeah, I mean, I think the physical afflictions are mapped to emotion because all emotions have a physical basis, either in the the electromagnetic interaction or the body chemistry that usually precedes the storytelling, our mind making sense of what it's feeling, and then turning it into an emotion. So yes, and then I think then the second part is the mind sense making.
Okay.
I think Curtis is right. As you were talking about this, Curtis, there was a video that came in my mind about Gotcha Rinpoche giving guidance to students in the 3 years retreat. And one of the things he was talking about is like having patience while you're cold, having patience while it's hot. If they were doing, they had the huts in the desert, or, if in the desert it was hot during the day and cold during the night. And that being patient was an opportunity to develop this kind of bliss.
It's really, I think it's plain. It's right in front of us. The third sentence, in the end, even if one feels heat, cold, and so on, those are very physical experiences.
Right. Okay. My opinion is I agree with Curtis here too. The reason why I agree with Curtis is this text distinguishes between physical bliss and mental bliss. And it would seem to me that the afflictions like greed and aggression and ignorance would have to be on the mental level and not on the physical level. The physical body, maybe in a sense you could say the physical body feels greed, but that's more of a mental state rather than a physical state. So since it's distinguishing between the two, I think it has to be more of the physical, as Curtis says right here.
The physical bliss, I think, would have to do with the senses.
Right.
Whereas the mental bliss would just have to do with the sixth sense or just the mind, being happy or unhappy.
Storytelling.
So quick question here. Do we get a jacket on us or not if you feel cold?
Depends what practice you're. You mean should you put a jacket on?
Should you put a jacket on or not?
Not if you're doing tummo practice, but if
No.
you're doing I always bundle up very well when I do my meditation because I don't want to shiver when I do the meditation in the morning. So I can't say that's the right thing to do, but that is what I do. So
I don't think this is. Go ahead, Pete.
Okay. Robert Thurman was recently saying that when the bodhisattvas on the higher levels, anything they experience, like if a brick drops on their foot, they experience it as bliss. And the reason being that their channels are so clear and purified that there's no pain coursing through them.
and that would be like it says here, the third stage, even if one feels heat, cold, and so on, the bliss is only intensified.
Yes.
Okay. So
And I want to mention one other thing. Real quick.
Go ahead.
Go
ahead.
I was going to add one other thing. This is really simple, but it's approachable to me. You can look at this very abstractly, but think about, say, I'll give you an example that I have. When I go from my house to the car, I usually don't put a jacket on. Now, I can feel happy with that affliction. I can feel the happiness as part of the bliss. Now, that's not reducing what this is talking about, but it does point to the way in which our attitude towards physical affliction can have a lot to do with how we experience it. If we aren't, if we're all particular about the cold, I step out front, I got to have a jacket on. It's too cold.
You're breaking up, Curtis.
Bad connection. Sorry.
You're breaking up bad, Curtis.
I'm happy when it's cold. It doesn't bother me. can kind of
It's bad.
Breaking
Okay,
up pretty bad, Chris.
Curtis, you may
okay,
want to turn off your camera, and that might lower your bandwidth usage, and your audio will come through clearer. He's
okay.
totally locked up now.
Pete, I think you had something you said you wanted to say? Wanted
I forgot what it was.
Okay,
I
okay,
live in the moment.
that's fine. Anybody else want to say something about bliss before we move on? Okay, what's the difference between being blissful and being happy? Is there a difference or not?
I think in the base sense, happiness is related to a cause. Bliss is related to immediate experience of a realization, usually.
So is it experienced as different? Is it experienced differently when you are blissful? Does it feel different than being happy or not? In
I
your
think
opinion?
happiness in the usual sense of the word refers to what's based on attachment.
Yes.
Okay,
So, for instance, I've got this birthday cake here. It makes me happy, right?
Yeah.
And then someone throws mud on the birthday cake and it makes me unhappy. But
Okay.
bliss is blissful the whole time. Anyway,
So it's joy free from attachment in your sense, you think?
yeah.
Joy free from
Yeah.
attachment.
Again, I'll say story. Happiness has a story behind it.
Okay, happiness has a story. Okay, that might, thank you. Your opinion is probably better than mine. So thank you. Okay, next, clarity. Now we get, God, I tell you, I can understand bliss. I cannot understand clarity and non-thought, but here we go. Clarity is also of two kinds: the clarity of the five senses and the clarity of the mind. The clarity of the five senses. The sign that the mind has become controlled is the appearance of what would seem to be objects of visual perception: mirages, bright sparks that resemble fireflies, lamp flames, moons, suns, firelight, dots of light, rainbows, and a variety of beings and forms. Okay, now the first thing that struck me when I read this, it says the clarity of the five senses, but we're only talking about vision right here. So I don't know. So yeah, so all these things seem to be appearances of light right in front of your eyes. I don't know anything about this, but why would that be such a wonderful thing? Why do we want to have that? I can understand why you want to be blissful. I don't understand what this is all about. Does anybody have any opinion or any idea?
Well, I think if we use what's written in the text here, it says the objects of visual perception. And as you point out, that maybe we also could look at objects of oral, things that we hear, things that
Right.
we taste, things that we smell. The five senses can be applied, and then we can put in the adjectives or whatever the right term is for each one of those
Yeah.
things that we would experience from those five senses.
I was wondering if, I was just trying to extrapolate from this. Maybe you hear music or something like that, or some other kind of sound when this experience of clarity arises. And why is this experience called clarity? Because seeing things before the eye is not my.
Seeing
I think because
go ahead, Pete.
Go
okay.
ahead.
I think because the way we usually see things is clouded in
Uh-huh.
various ways. It's
Yeah.
clouded by our attachment, it's clouded by our ignorance and aggression and so forth. And
Oh, he
wait,
disappeared
I got
too.
to disconnect. My phone wanted to do a software update. Okay, so and anyway, our senses are clouded, and then when it's clear, things are very pure looking to us, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're right, Pete. I think these are symptoms. I think these are all symptoms of the mind getting out of the way of the body, because we all know that our brain fills in most of the blanks in what we're seeing, based on the immediate history. So these mirages and bright sparks and lamp flames probably are occurrences that are happening in a very physical level. These physical senses firing off and sort of being expressed, as opposed to the mind smoothing things over and creating a sort of the reality that we're used to.
So
It's
you
also,
think,
I think,
right, right.
go ahead.
So you think we've taught ourselves to ignore these sort of glitches in our visual experience or something like that?
Well, it's kind of like in the example of the eye, in the case of the visual, it's like the eye being a camera. A camera through the lens sees all this stuff, but it doesn't analyze it.
Right.
So it's the same thing with what you hear, what you taste, what you see, etc. Without the mind getting in the way of that. It's just
Okay.
the raw appearance of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is different than what we normally take as what's out there visually. Okay. It's an interesting thought. And it says a variety of beings in form. I assume these are a variety of holy beings that you're seeing, and not little gray men or anything like that. So
I think the idea of being controlled, we might be talking controlled substance here.
yeah, I was wondering. It does sound like a psychedelic experience, doesn't it?
Beings and forms. Yeah.
It's only a
bit
movie.
like that.
It's only a
Yeah.
movie.
It's only a movie.
It also sounds like dreams.
Dreams,
It's
right?
similar to dream yoga in that sense, and we experience the dreamlikeness of sense
It's only a
perception.
dream.
It's only a dream. Okay, so that's the clarity of the five senses. And it says, the clarity of the mind, as all thoughts of faults and their remedies arise, there is the knowledge of the mind's cognition, emanations of thoughts, and their harmonious interdependence. And that is purity,
And there is
clarity,
purity.
freedom from sleepiness, and you think that you know all phenomena. That is wild. Okay. Well, that I understand better than the first section. So what it says here, mind's cognition, which is, I guess, the mind's process of thoughts, the emanations of that, which I suppose are perceptions, but I'm not sure. If you have a different opinion, please let me know. And their harmonious interdependence. So it's both subject and object in their harmonious interdependence.
So this is the mind seeing itself and not
Right.
being spooked by it.
Right.
Just enjoying the mind doing its thing.
Okay. And
Oh.
it's right. Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I wonder if cognition refers to perception or if it refers to actual like cogitating thoughts,
Mm,
I think recognition.
recognition.
Yeah, I think it's the recognitions of knowing. Excuse the word, of being aware that all this stuff is just mind.
okay.
In
And
brackets is the minds. So it kind of
The-
points you towards it being
the mind's
cognition.
Yeah, that's the author's interpolation, of course. Emanation of thought and their harmonious interdependence. So I think it's subject and object, but I could be wrong there. But it could very well be wrong. And it's experienced as purity. That's not hard to understand. Clarity, freedom from sleepiness. So you're never going to feel sleepy. So I can see I've got a good way to go. And you think that you know all phenomena. Now, the last is a little unexpected. I'm not saying it's puzzling. It says you think that you know, meaning that you don't actually know, but you think that you know. At least that's what I'm assuming that it's saying.
Well,
believe that
how
you
would you,
know.
what's the difference between thinking and actually thinking?
Thinking of
It's the same
something.
thing.
Well, I'm using think here as a synonym for believe, right? Believe that you know all phenomena. So it's I'm just interpreting think as believe right here.
So I look at it that it's the mind seeing its process.
Okay,
Being
It's
aware
seeing the
of.
process of the mind.
okay.
Oh, there's those crazy thoughts that I always have, you know? Okay, I can let it go. It's
So
But
getting
like
behind the thoughts,
what's that?
getting behind the thoughts.
No, just letting the thought go instead of holding on to the thought, saying, "Oh, I'm a meditator. I shouldn't be having these thoughts anymore." But it's not true because these thoughts still come. It's what I do as an enlightened person in processing those thoughts that makes the difference. Whether I remain enlightened or I allow myself to be pulled back and reinvestigate the thought again.
Yeah,
Being
like it's
aware
like it
of being
says,
aware.
like it says in the beginning, knowing that knowing the signs that indicate when meditation experiences are accompanied by realization or not. If there's
Okay.
realization, then there's knowing the mind as mind.
Okay, yeah, that comes a little later, right? So, uh, actually, they talk about. Well, we'll get to it. Okay, I hope we get to it. So, yeah. Well, I want my opinion's no more important than anybody else's, so I guess we'll just keep on going. Non-thought. First, you maintain that the mind's. First, you maintain the mind's focus upon any object. Then thoughts cease and your mind remains resting wherever it has been placed. In the end, you experience the cessation of all thought activity. So, okay, so that it's a break here. So this is during meditation, or is this both in meditation and after meditation as well, do you think? So
At this point, it's regarded as the same.
So you think this is both during meditation and after meditation? You say there's no difference
There's no difference.
to the person at this level.
At this level, yes.
Yeah, that may be. That may be.
The first paragraph of this section says, first, know the signs that indicate when meditation experiences are accompanied by realization or not. So I think it clearly points to the part
during
of the
meditation. During meditation. So the experience of bliss and clarity and non-thought arise during meditation. Okay. My personal opinion, just my personal opinion, is that they arise more strongly during the practice of meditation, but they can also arise spontaneously outside of meditation as well. So
It's the way it
Well,
works.
yeah, I think, and what it's saying is that these are the signs: bliss, clarity, and non-thought happen when experiences are accompanied by realization. When they're
No,
not, we don't get
what,
this.
what does it actually say, right? Are accompanied by realization or not, it says.
Right. It doesn't mean both.
Might not be accompanied. Yeah, it could be accompanied by realization or could not be accomplished by realization. Okay. Anybody want to say something about non-thought? I don't think there's too much to.
Well, there's many different ways in looking at this, and many
Yeah.
different great masters who've, written about these things. When I first was introduced to this idea many years ago,
Yeah.
it was bliss, clarity, and unimpededness. Instead of no thought or non-thought, it was unimpededness, which at that time, I didn't have a real understanding, but it's a unimpededness of thought, that we're not letting the thought be an obstacle to us. Whatever the thought is, it's not an obstacle.
Well, it definitely says here very clearly the cessation of all thought as the final stage.
As
So, yeah.
not being an obstacle.
So this may be a more succinct way of looking at it, because as I said, I learned that long ago
Okay.
from a course dictionary or something like that I looked it up. It was giving more of an outer description. Now we're getting into, much more, inner meaning and enlightened meaning. So this may be a more accurate, precise meaning in relation to the Mahamudra experience itself.
Okay.
But then Lens probably wouldn't say here, I mean, I'm splitting, the hairs here, but probably wouldn't say in that situation, then the thoughts would cease. But here it says that the thoughts cease. But if it's unimpededness, that means that, yeah, you still have the thoughts, but you don't see that as an obstacle. You kind of like see through, right?
Well, that's correct. But then at some point, and I can only say that, if I've been there, it's been something that you don't realize until after you've been there.
Mhm.
You don't say, "Oh, here I am in meditation and no thought."
Right,
I just blew
obviously.
it out of the water, right?
Right.
So it's like like in the movie, like in the movie Contact. When you're having this whole thing appear before you, and meanwhile it only took 30 seconds or something like that.
Okay. Okay, I think you're quite right that you could not be possibly aware of it intellectually while the experience is happening.
That's right. So you're in that no thought. You're in that Mahamudra, in that point of no thought.
Or jhana is traditionally considered, right? You have the different levels of jhana, which go up to neither perception nor non-perception, like that. Okay. When these experiences are accompanied by, okay, now we distinguish between when these experiences are accompanied by wisdom or not. When these experiences are accompanied by wisdom, you will know that bliss has no real nature, so that you will not be savoring its taste, so you're not attached to bliss. Clarity will be free from the fault of becoming scattered and unstable through thoughts about causes and results. In non-thought, even when you've attained an unwavering state of mind, self-knowing, the instantaneous, did I split too many pages? Self-knowing will directly know the instantaneous arising and ceasing of mental activity.
Wait a minute. Where'd you go? What'd you do here?
Did I miss something? Let me see.
We should be on page 162.
Well, you see, I've got the electronic form here. So it's
You're good. You're good.
even though you've attained the unwavering state of mind,
Oh, okay.
self-knowing will directly know the instantaneous arising and ceasing of mental activities. These are the signs that you are following the true path. Okay. Okay, let's do the next paragraph as well. You will go astray if you become attached to the taste of the experience of bliss. If you become proud of clarity and believe in its perfection, and if, through the experiencing the taste of non-thought blended with neutral emptiness, you start ignoring the law of karma. This may result in rebirth in the form realm, but this isn't the path to enlightenment. Therefore, it's important that your experience be accompanied by true wisdom. Okay, so that's really the last part of this section on the three.
So let's talk about that true wisdom for just a minute, because to me it implies the experience of having lost that clarity, losing that purity, and having to regain it again. If we just spontaneously attain the purity, there's no real wisdom there, because the wisdom implies that you know both sides. That's the jhana, knowing the phenomenal wisdom, knowing the absolute wisdom.
Okay. So it seems to me that what we're talking about here is that one has overcome the coarse afflictions. Generally, the difference between what they call the coarse afflictions and I don't know, I never heard the phrase, but the fine afflictions is the one is attachment to our normal everyday phenomena, whereas the second are attachment to the attainments of meditation. So here we're talking about attachment to the attainments of meditation, which are bliss, clarity, and non-thought. So
Has anyone ever heard teaching on arousing bodhicitta as a way to prevent from getting kind of lost in this jhana and ending up in the form realm? Like, will bodhicitta, the resolve to attain enlightenment for the benefit of beings, prevent that from happening?
well, what do you think?
I would say so.
What's your opinion, Pete? No, I haven't heard.
I mean, I would tend to think so, but I'm not certain.
I would say so, because like that would put you out of yourself, because like when you're proud of yourself, you become cocky because you say, hey, I'm so good at meditating, I have all this results, then of course everything is kind of like pointing towards yourself. But when you're trying to achieve bodhicitta, right, everything is for the benefit of all sentient beings. And that's why just like asking for, like, dedicate the merit of the practice for the sake of enlightenment for all sentient beings would be so good. So yeah, I see that. Is there a good remedy?
Well, okay, let's go back to what it actually says here. When it's accompanied by wisdom, you will see that bliss has no real nature, meaning seeing that the bliss is empty is really the antidote to attachment to bliss, right? At least for the first one, it's pretty clear.
Where are you?
Second paragraph, 162.
Yeah, the paragraph starts, let me see. I just flipped back one too many. When these experiences are accompanied by wisdom, you will know that bliss has no real nature. Okay, so clarity is a little harder to understand, free of being scattered and unstable through thoughts about causes and results. And non-thought, the antidote, well, it's saying self-knowing will directly know the instantaneous arising and ceasing of mental activities. And going astray is you become proud of clarity and believe in its perfection. Become attached to bliss. You become proud of clarity, and you ignore the law of karma. But those seem to be like the traditional afflictions there. So to the extent that bodhicitta helps us overcome the traditional afflictions, then of course it would help us cut through these problems.
I think our mind, our investigation right now is like a washing machine kind of going back and forth.
Yes.
What we ought to do now is continue in the text, because there's more explanation.
Okay, you're right. It does get a little clearer. If you want to go on,
and then we can come back to this in light of reading on and seeing what was elucidated for us.
Okay.
Bernie, can you adjust your camera too? We keep seeing the back of your head.
My camera is messed up, unfortunately. I'm thinking about going out and buying a new camera, but it keeps sinking. That's the problem. So it keeps sinking. It doesn't stay in one position. Okay, sorry about that. So we'll keep going on here. There are many ways of going astray during this time, but there are included these three. Emptiness becomes your enemy. Compassion becomes your enemy. Thoughts about cause and result become your enemy. And this is actually a lot clearer to me, at least. Emptiness becomes your enemy. You think, all phenomena are in my mind. My mind is free of conceptual elaboration. Therefore, nothing is real. Why should I make an effort with body, speech, and mind? What is the point of doing composite good actions? This is going astray as the result of emptiness becoming your enemy.
So this will be what, nihilism? Is that right?
Yeah, nihilism. It sounds like nihilism.
And it seems like it would be something that would be done based on ignorance or lack of wisdom after having this experience.
Yeah, well, you're seeing you've got a preliminary sense of the unreality of all phenomena. So you say, what's the point of doing good deeds, because the good deeds are unreal. So what's the point of doing them? Okay. Compassion becomes your enemy. You think, I must benefit beings through my compassion for all who don't have any kind of realization.
It's my kind of realization.
Then, no longer listening to teachings or practicing, you abandon meditation and dedicate yourself to composite actions, exhausting yourself by your attachment to the reality of yourself and beings. This is going astray as a result of compassion becoming your enemy. Seems to be the opposite of the first fault.
Gratification.
You're abandoning your meditation practice in order to go out and be a teacher, it sounds like. So when you're not ready to be a teacher yet. So that seems to be the second obstacle. They seem to be equal and opposite to me. Maybe you have a different opinion, but that's the way it seems to me.
It's also the fault of many activists. The
Sure.
activist who doesn't have a contemplative life and gets burned out.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay.
What would be?
Yeah.
Can we expand a little bit on this? So, what
Sure.
would be the outcomes of this second fault, compassion becoming the enemy?
Okay, well, I think the chief fault is that since you're no longer practicing intensively, that you're not going to get any further in your meditation practice. That where you are at this point is where you stop. You're not yet fully enlightened, and because you've devoting your effort to teaching now, you're not going to continue to develop your own practice and becoming a Buddha.
So
that's-
isn't that another example of nihilism?
No, it seems to me the opposite, because you're taking everything as real at this point.
So is
You
that
have-
eternalism? Because
Yeah, it seems more like eternalism to me. Yeah, it seems more like eternalism to me.
But so at that point, compassion would not be compassion anymore, right? So it's not necessarily compassion. It is, what is it? Believing that you achieved or realized
Well-
compassion, and you are acting on the grounds of that thought.
In my opinion, it is compassion, but it's not wise compassion. It's like somebody who wants to help you but doesn't know what's best to do. In that it would be better for this person to meditate for a while longer, and then they can be a teacher later, than try to go out too soon and try to be a teacher. So it is compassion, but it's not being applied in a wise way. Anyway, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, that's kind of like how I see it as well. You're just like, you have to take a few more classes. You have to
Yeah.
go back to school.
Not do what we're doing. Okay, I'm sorry. We all need to meditate more. Okay, thoughts about cause and result becoming your enemy. You see that everything is created by thought, and you think, I shall make myself omniscient, and then practice the minor, ordinary activities of grammar, logic, crafts, and medicine, throwing aside the power of shamatha and vipassana. This is going astray as the result of thoughts about causes and results becoming your enemy. Okay, this seems to me to be a version of the second one, that you're not going out and teaching directly, but you're applying yourself to learning the wrong kind of stuff. Like, I suppose at this stage, your mind is very clear, and it seems to you that you can learn things very quickly. That's my assumption here. And that's why you jump into these activities. Otherwise, why wouldn't you have studied these things in the first place? But you think now, as a result of your meditation practice that your mind is very clear and you're able to learn all these things very quickly and teach them to others, like, let's say, medicine, and which is obviously a very compassionate activity, but it's not as compassionate as learning the Dharma. Okay. Your thoughts are welcome here too. So what do you think?
I think that it's the third one is more akin to the first one of
Really?
emptiness becoming your enemy. Because if you're going to divide it between samsara and nirvana, the first is too much nirvana, the second is too much samsara. This one too, to me, the third one seems to be placing too much weight on the experience of emptiness, the omniscience, instead of being grounded properly.
Omniscience, okay, because I don't normally associate grammar and logic with omniscience, but it's worldly knowledge.
That's my point. You're putting too much weight on the transcendental sort of knowledge or experience, and not enough on the grounding behaviors and experiences of a human being of developing these fields of experience.
Okay.
But he's saying not to do that.
As he's saying, if you try to just be, I'm going to put it this way. I think he's saying if all you do is have the meditative experience and you don't have it grounded in these practices properly, you have a pejorative view of them, they're really secondary, you end up, I don't think you have the right attitude. It needs to be balanced, in other words. And this is a case of being imbalanced on the side with an attitude on the side of the non-thought experience as opposed to being grounded as a human being.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts? Okay, what's interesting to me, first the person here says, I shall make myself omniscient. And how does he go about it? By learning as much as he can about worldly knowledge.
That's not what it says.
Yeah, it says,
It says, I
and
shall make
then
myself
practice
omniscient.
minor ordinary activities.
Okay, listen to what it says. I shall make myself omniscience. And then I practice the minor ordinary activities. They're really subordinate. They're secondary to this focus on omniscience.
Okay, well, what's the connection between the two? How do you make yourself omniscient?
Well, look what else he says you do. You do when you focus on an issue. You throw aside the power of samatha and vipassana. In other words, I don't need that stuff. I'm just going to be omniscient. It's skipping stages. It's not fully incarnating.
Okay, you're saying you're trying to jump to the final stage, and you think you're already there.
That's what I was saying.
Okay,
It's kind of like a spiritual materialization.
Yeah, trying to jump.
It's the outer meanings of these words, these ideas, without bringing in the spirituality of it and being able to transcend these worldly activities that are being pointed out here, and not with the connection point of being able to help other beings and liberating yourself and liberating them. It doesn't have that quality of the liberation in there.
But not properly developed either.
Yes, right.
Okay.
No, think about the person. You can picture this kind of person. Oh, some of these new age types. Oh, I'm enlightened. I experienced the Buddha nature, and they don't even know the doctrine of Buddhism.
Exactly.
They can't even if they try, they botch it. And then they'll say, "Oh, that's not that important. The important thing is I'm enlightened." And
they get caught up in all the elucidations rather than the liberation.
And it's also, I shall make myself omniscient. That ego is still going strong.
Okay. So I want to get through the next little section, how you train with the experiences. And then I think the last thing I'll read today, at least, then we talk about it.
Okay.
How you train with experiences. When you have the experience of bliss, seal it with emptiness and unreality. When thoughts manifest as clear appearances in the mind, enter into a clear and non-conceptual knowing. When you experience clairvoyance, the 10 signs or other vivid perceptions of the 5 senses, be certain that they are nothing but your mind and have no attachment to their reality, fixating on their characteristics, instead transcended through your own freedom from conceptual elaboration. When you experience non-thought and emptiness, seal it with the 2 appearances of clarity and apply the analytic explanation of the causal and resultant interdependence, fault, and their remedies. Okay, so we'll do that. This is the antidote to falling into a false approach to bliss, clarity, and non-thought. So it says, anybody want to comment on it, or should I go through it?
It's
Anybody
all
else?
about being balanced.
Okay, it says,
Well, this is what I was saying before. I mean, you know, you can put this under the category of spiritual pride.
right,
You know,
it
we get a
says-
little bit of
right.
spirituality, we get some understanding about it, and we start running around, you know, saying, "Oh, I'm liberated. Oh, I'm enlightened and everything, and I can teach you everything you need to know." When really you haven't been. You're deluded.
Okay, so let me just repeat the antidotes that it mentions here. First, seal it with emptiness and unreality. Second, enter into clear and non-conceptual knowing. And third, transcend it through your own freedom from conceptual elaboration. So what that says to me, when these experiences arise, bring them into the meditation on Mahamudra and see their essential nature through the practice of Mahamudra. You are free to give your own opinion if you don't agree with that.
You mean seeing these thoughts?
Seeing these experiences of bliss, clarity, and non-thought that arise. When you have the experience of bliss, make it part of your Mahamudra practice. When you have the experience of clarity, the same thing, and the non-thought, the same.
Yeah, well, I think it's saying thoughts and experience.
Right.
Because thoughts can, you know, that can lead to the mental misconceptions.
Right, sure.
So we have to be aware of that, just like, you know, false experience.
Okay. There are a couple footnotes here which are
rich. Both those footnotes are very rich.
Yeah, let me see. I have trouble with the electronic version, so here we go. How you train with experiences. The 10 signs, well, we don't go into that. 2 experiences of clarity. What it says here is that the 2 experiences of clarity are the clarity of the 5 senses and the clarity of the mind as described above. So it's the experience of clarity. So, and note number, the next footnote is, that was footnote 224. 222, that's just the 10 signs. They're not so interesting. It's just what we said before. Smoke, mirage, clouds, fireflies, sun, moons, shining jewels, eclipse, stars, and light rays. So, not that interesting. Okay, so okay, since it's not likely that non-thought is going to rise, but it's certainly possible that we have the experience of bliss. That's particularly important, I think, to people at our level. So it says, seal it with emptiness and unrealities. So when the experience of bliss arises, you want to look at the bliss and see that the bliss too is empty. So anyway, that's what I get out of it. And the other ones we don't really have to worry about yet. So any Any comments? Want to tell me I don't know what I'm talking about? That's always welcome. Or give a
Well,
different
let's say one
opinion.
thing. What some of this reminds me of is like if you're going down the interstate and there's all these exits you could take with,
Right.
very appealing looking resorts and so forth, but you have to kind of keep heading down the interstate to get to where you're going.
Okay. And okay, so that's not being attached to these experiences, I think. So, but okay, I don't know what to say more than what I've said.
Yeah, read the last two paragraphs in that section.
Okay, the last two paragraphs are, if when you are in solitude, you experience everything has blended into one taste without any distinction between day or night, then blend happiness and suffering to see whether they become one taste or not. If you feel proud of your experience, know that it is the work of Maras and meditate on pure perception of everyone, developing compassion towards all beings, and developing an equanimity that will never have clinging attachment or rejecting aversion toward anything in samsara or nirvana. That's pretty clear. And this is where Pete's compassion comes in, I think. Develop compassion towards all beings, bodhicitta. And that's so you don't become proud from your experiences of bliss, clarity, and non-thought, it says here. So anybody have something to say about that or anything to add?
My mind is still clinging to Pete's analogy with the highway.
Okay.
Okay. In my mind, I was like, I exited the highway and I'm on foot.
I'm a dead end street.
Wherever I'm going, I was like, I got no gas stations around me.
Okay. So
sorry, Bernie.
What does no distinction between day or night mean? Do you know? You can't tell the difference between day and night anymore? That seems a little strange.
I think it just means don't sleep. I think it means just keep practicing, whether it's day or night, keep practicing.
I think it means that your experience while you're asleep is no different than your experience while you're awake.
Oh, okay.
Maybe. If anybody else has a different opinion, you're welcome to give it here. But I mean, obviously, when it's day out because you can only go out to gather firewood in the day and you can go out in the night to gather firewood. So,
well, to me, I think it's very clear.
Okay.
Part of the development talks about how day and night start to merge, whether you're awake or whether you're asleep, there's a certain baseline experience.
Okay.
But he says very clearly, he says, okay, you're having that experience. See if happiness and suffering are one taste or not. Because if they're not, you're not there yet.
Right. I think you're absolutely right.
Is one taste a way of saying non-dualistic?
One taste I always thought means no difference between meditation and post-meditation.
Well, I mean, all those things.
Yeah.
I've been told by a lama that I asked that the one taste is bliss.
Okay. One taste is
but
bliss.
But it's like we were talking about before, where if you drop a rock on your foot, it's experienced as bliss. That would be, and then or if you have a nice dinner, that would be a equal bliss.
I think, I seem to remember when we were talking about these different stages, we've done it many times. One taste is different. It's before non-meditation.
Right.
So if you've got one taste, that's a sign of attainment. But he's clearly saying, see if you've got one. I'm coming back to my point. If you don't have one taste between happiness and suffering, you're not there yet.
Right.
Because you have this wonderful experience of one taste, but I can't quite integrate suffering. I'm just happy all the time. Well, you're not really one taste then.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if you're meditating in the cave somewhere and you're perfectly happy doing that, you might not be fully enlightened yet because you're kind of isolated yourself from the normal problems of everyday life.
But remember that happiness is different than bliss.
And wasn't that the distinction of the arhat?
Yeah, well, the distinction, the traditional distinction is that arhats only understand half of emptiness, the emptiness of selflessness, but not the emptiness of phenomena. That's the traditional distinction that's made. So, but yeah, arhats don't have the compassion that bodhisattvas have, obviously. So, anybody else want to say something else? Or I suppose we could close since it's almost time. Okay. So, one last thing. If anybody wants to summarize this whole section in a sentence or two, maybe Lance, you have an opinion. What would you say in one sentence or two about these three experiences of bliss, clarity, and non-thought? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but let's have just a little short summary of what this section is all about.
Well, what it means to me is that, you know, the yogi, the practitioner who is on this path, is always going through periods of purification. And what this is purifying those inner thoughts, those things that can lead to spiritual pride very easily. And we need to be ever vigilant that we're never, you know, out of that. And I shouldn't say never out of it, you know, but when we become Buddha, of course, you have transcended to that point. But it's perfectly human, natural being on the path to go through these things. And here are techniques that are used for us to be able to recognize and see that even at this level of being on the path, there is still purification practice to be performed.
Anybody else want to take their stab at summarizing this whole section?
That was a long sentence, Lance.
That's all. Yeah, well, it's okay. Go ahead if you want to. Have anybody else have some?
I mean, I'm just saying what Lance said a slightly different way.
Okay.
All these things we're talking about are spiritual experiences, but he's clearly pointing out that they're only partial. They're along the way, and that you can get kind of stuck in different ways, and they're various antidotes, things to be aware of. In others, you got to keep moving, and when you get stuck, you really you're missing something very important. You're getting stuck. No, I've got great clarity. Oh, I've got great emptiness. It's not really so great because it's very flawed. All these things he's talking about are spiritual experiences that are very flawed because they're missing some important points. And probably the biggest thing is there's ego still playing games with it.
Okay. Pete, you're usually good for a sentence or two. Do you have a sense of a summary of all this section or not?
Well, I think, everyone's already.
You're muted.
You're muted, Pete, or something.
Phone still updating.
Okay.
Progression.
Okay.
They're just not meant to be the destination.
Okay.
Until you get realized.
I'll add my sentence last. When you practice meditation, as you continue to practice meditation, all sorts of wonderful experiences arise. And here is a description of what they are. But don't get attached to these experiences and bring whatever experiences you have back to the practice of meditation and Mahamudra.
And virtue and bodhicitta.
And virtue and bodhicitta. Thank you. That's important too.
Notice too that he's not saying throw away these experiences so much, right. Like, I won't, because these are highways of being, but don't be stuck, limited by them.
Okay.
Or attached.
So we'll leave it there for now. And
did Adrian want to say something? I didn't hear Adrian speak.
I know Bernie wants to exclude me from that.
Do you want to say something, Adrian? I didn't mean to cut you off. I just thought you were a little bit shy and you didn't want to say something.
Well, that's true. I'm a little shy too. My sentence would be from what we talked about tonight to just be aware of the signs of being on the path and the signs of exiting the path, to use what Pete was saying a little bit earlier. Just be
Okay,
aware of those as you practice.
okay, that's fine. So that would be it for tonight. Thank everyone for contributing so well to the talk, and I hope Thomas finds this helpful if he listens to it. Okay.
Adrian, are you going to be available for the next meeting? Next meeting will be
2
Is
weeks.
it me?
should be the 15th.
Is it me?
Yeah.
Should.
Okay. All right. So you're on for the next time.
Yeah.
So dedication. By the virtues collected in the three times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate word of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Sri Kumpala Ratna Shri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, Master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Om. Ah. Om. Ah. Om. Om. Ah. Om. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable from the body, speech, and mind, all the enlightenments for the benefit of all sentient beings. Very good. Thank you, Bernie. Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you for
All right.
everybody. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Michael, I hope you had a good time where you were, and I hope that kimchi comes out real good from Tom.
I know. Ask him for some
All right.
kimchi.
All right. See you guys next 2 weeks.
See you in 2
All right.
weeks, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.